What is up, YouTube? Today we're going to show you how to put in a left-hand axle seal on a 2011 Ford Explorer. Now, this procedure does apply to other Ford vehicles out there that use 6F50, 6F50 transmission, like the Taurus, the Flex, the Edge, MKT, just about every mid-sized vehicle in the Ford lineup that's front-wheel drive uses the 6F50 or 6F55. So today we're going to show you how to change it out and get it fixed up on there. The leaks are not too common, but as you can see in this one, it was starting to spread on there. Customer was concerned. We took care of it for him. It's a pretty simple procedure. We'll show you the tips and tricks to get it done right. As you can see here, it's pretty trash in the old garage here. Look at this. This is pretty trippy, actually. Look at this. We are moving. We are moving to a new house and hopefully building a new shop starting in spring. So we're going to have a full dedicated shop with a lift, all kinds of great stuff. A dedicated shop on my land there. So look forward to that. As you can see, I'm very, very excited. Ecstatic. Anyways, let's go ahead, put that axle seal in there, fix this customer's car, and get out of here. Alright, here we go. We're going to start on the repair here. Of course, the vehicle's been jacked up. It's sitting on a jack stand right here in the pinch weld, so we're nice, safe, and secure. Now, even though there's a jack stand on there, I like to keep the jack underneath it, just in case the jack stand kicks out or whatever. We're still safe working on this. Now, of course, we're going to pull the wheel off. We need a 19mm socket, and if you have the impact, you can just impact them off while it's off the ground. If you don't, you need to brake torque on each one of these lug nuts on here before you actually pick it off the ground so it doesn't spin on you. Now, the kit we're installing is this one right here from Ford. You want to use a Ford seal. It includes the revised seal and then a protector. You can kind of see it in there, a blue protector. We'll go over it later too to get it back into there properly without damaging the new seal. So let's go ahead and pull the wheel off. This is my impact that I just rebuilt. The Ingersoll Rand 231. It's back in action. Now this last one, these are nice wheels. You want to hold the wheel because it's going to kick out on you, okay? As soon as you pull the last one off, so just hold it. Get it off of there. And if it's not corroded, it will kick out on you, so just be ready for that. Otherwise, hit it a little bit and get this baby out of here. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is pull the axle nut off right here. It's a 32mm socket, but first you want to clean the threads that are exposed right here. Make sure you take a good look at yours and make sure all the corrosion and dirt is off of there, because as we're backing this nut off here, we can actually cross thread the CV axle on here. So take the time to spray it quick with some rust penetrant and clean it up just a bit on here. Just knock most of it off of there. And then I like to clean it off. Some brake clean. Look at that, like new. Okay, at this point, we can go ahead and start taking it off. Like I said, it's a 32mm. Get that off of there, put it to the side with our lug nuts, and this is free at this point. Now at this point, the axle can be either pressed into there pretty tight, or it can be nice and loose, like this one right here. If it's loose like that, you just push it through by hand. Otherwise, you may want to put your nut back onto here, okay? So it's flush like that, and then you can tap it with a hammer and kind of help it through. The best way to do this, though, if you have it, is an air hammer, okay? There's a little divot right here in the center, and then you get a tip kind of like this, okay? And you just put it in the center, and you vibrate it right on through. All we're doing is vibrating it through. That's all we're doing, and that works out very well for the stuck ones. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and turn the wheel back all the way to the left, and we're going to get rid of this caliper and bracket together as an assembly, and we're going to hang it on the strut. Okay, there we go. Okay, now on the back side of this caliper and bracket assembly, there's a bolt here and a bolt here. You'll see them. There'll be 18mm heads on them. So we're going to take off both of them. Okay. Pull the bolts out. Look just like that. Okay. Off to the side once again, and you're going to want to hang this on the strut coil so we're not putting pressure on this hose. So it should basically lift off here. You might have a rust ridge to deal with, but otherwise it lifts right off. So we're going to take it, we're going to hang it as high as we can out of the way. Now the idea here is to separate the CV joint and axle from the knuckle here in the hub assembly. Now the best way to do that I found is to take out these two bolts right here and separate and push back the strut and allow the knuckle to flop forward. We'll get enough clearance and we can pop that out of there, and then of course get it out so we can get to the seal. Now there can be an issue with alignment angles afterwards, so what you want to do is clean up the knuckle right here, okay? And we're going to take a marker and we're going to mark exactly where it's at right now, okay? Something like this. And for the heck of it, I do both sides. So we're just going to take a good Sharpie and make a nice close mark on there. And the same thing on the other side. That way, going back together, we line those up, we cinch the bolts, and it's back to where it was. So let's go ahead and turn the wheel back to the right. Right about there. We can go ahead and take these off. Okay, before we start pulling these two bolts out right here and this knuckle goes flopping forward, we want to go ahead and get some slack on the ABS wiring also. So we're going to go ahead and just slide it out of the mount on here on the strut, okay? And then follow it back to the body. Same thing, pull it out, just pulls right out, it's really nice. And now we have all kinds of slack because this whole knuckle is going to go like this eventually. And it's going to tug on it. So at this point, we can go ahead and start pulling these bolts and nuts off of here. Now, the nut is 15/16 and the head of the bolt is 13/16. So what I use is just a regular box end wrench right here to hold it onto there. And then we'll go ahead and start pulling them off. And the same thing down here. Now this one is nice and easy. It's coming out nice and easy. You know, the galvanized coating on here is doing its job, so hopefully you have the same luck. Again, keep these nuts and bolts together over here so we don't lose any. Now at this point, you can simply push in on the strut and pull out on the knuckle or hold the knuckle in place. See that right there? It'll kind of come away from it. At this point, if yours is stuck, your CV joint, your CV half shaft is stuck in the hub here, you want to push it through instead of letting the knuckle flop forward. You don't want to dislocate the joint in there. So this one, of course, is nice and easy. So we're just going to push it through and pull it through in the backside here, like so. And there you go. Now the knuckle is fully resting on the joint down there. It's not tugging on anything. It's all out of the way. We're ready to go ahead and get this CV shaft out of here. Okay, so looking at the axle as it goes into the transmission from under the vehicle, what's nice about this is that this side of the vehicle only is jacked up, so all the fluid kind of sloshed to this side of it. So we shouldn't get much leakage out of here. What you do want to do though is clean off any kind of mud and debris before you start opening up the transmission. What I like to do is get a little compressed air and some brake clean, okay? And you want to spray at the shaft on there and the housing of the transmission. You don't want to necessarily inject it into the transmission through the seal there. And then we're going to go ahead and use some compressed air and just make sure it's nice and clean before opening it up. Now at this point you'll notice it doesn't just exactly pull out of there, okay? There's a circlip inside of there that holds it and retains it in there for you, and we need to pop past that. So what you want to do is use a pry bar between the transmission and the CV shaft right here. I'll try to fix my lights. We have some good lighting. That looks much better. And I'll try to show that on camera here. It is pretty tight under here. There's lots of lights and cameras and stuff like that, but here's the idea. You want to get between there, okay? I have to move you over here. There we go. Get between there, and then we're simply going to pop it out. And it should come out pretty easy like this one did. I'm just trying not to hit the camera. Now at this point, you should be past that circlip on there, okay? So what you want to do is just support it, get it out of the other side by the hub there, okay? And now we're just gonna pull it out, like so. A little leakage. There we go. And just kind of work it out of there. Just be careful when you pull it out so we get it out there nice and straight. Now once it's drained out pretty much all the way and flushed the area for us, we can go ahead and start pulling that seal out. Now what you can use is that same angled pry bar we used to pull the CV shaft out. And the idea here is to get behind it, okay, behind the seal right here in the center, and we're gonna pry off the outside of the seal. Okay, so usually you do that from underneath. It's a little tight in here to get this one in here. I use straight ones a lot of times on this particular vehicle. But what you can use is something like this, is an indexable seal puller, and we'll get in there like so. You can see it right there, it's hooked behind it, and then we'll just pry off the seal itself. There we go. A couple hits and it falls right out. Now once the seal is out, we can go ahead and start cleaning up the outside of the transmission case there and the inside here with the rag, so we make sure there's no debris or metal shavings, anything like that in there. And then I'll be ready for our new seal. You can install the new seal with it leaking out like this. It'll seal up just fine on there on the outside. So we're gonna go ahead and just clean it. Make sure we're good to go. Looks good. Okay, so with our new seal and the seal installer, we can go ahead and start pounding it back into there and seat it into the side of the transmission case. Now, if you don't have a seal installer like this, what you can do is just tap around the outside of it with a hammer, nice and even. We can get it in there that way too. Now you can install this with it nice and clean, and it's still leaking just a little bit. There's no actual sealant that needs to cure and dry. It's just a rubber ring around the outside of the seal there. So make sure it's nice and clean. We can go ahead and just get it in there. Now, once you think you have the seal in there all the way around, nice and seated, you want to get a good flashlight and check it out and make sure it's flush all the way around. I can see down here, it's nice and flush, but up top there, we're sticking out a little bit. So make sure it's seated all the way around before going any further. So go ahead, put it back into here, and we'll get seated. And you hear that sound right there, how the tone changed? That's what you want to hear, and that'll give you a good indication it's fully seated. Once I hear that, I usually give it a couple more taps, and then we'll pull it out and inspect. Now, if you didn't have gloves on, even with gloves on, I can feel it. I put my nail in here, and I feel all the way around. You can get a really good sense of it, too. Okay, we're fully seated. Now, there is grease on the inside of this seal from the factory, so there's no need to grease anything inside of here. So now that it's on, we're in, should be no more leakage. Let's clean the side of the transmission case here a little bit before that half shaft is in the way here. Look at that, like new. That's what I like to see. Now, there's one thing they include in these new kits nowadays, because it is so tight on here. They include a seal protector. So once the seal is installed, we can go ahead and put this into the center here. Okay, now just kind of sit there, and that'll protect the seal as the jagged part of the CV shaft goes past it. Okay, now if you're really careful, you can just avoid this step, but it is kind of nice on there. Okay, now with our CV shaft on here nice and clean, we cleaned it all up already, we can go ahead and get this through. We'll just kind of get through the center there. Now once you're past it on there, you can go ahead and pull this protector out of here. Okay, so we're just going to kind of move it around like that, and it'll go in so far at one point that you'll feel it spline with the transmission. And we can't turn it no more, and you can hear it splined in over there. At that point, we're going to plunge this CV shaft so we can get past that circlip and lock this puppy in. Now, with the CV shaft into the transmission, we're past the seal protector's out of there, okay? We can feel that we're splined with the transmission. At this point, it's safe to plunge the CV shaft so that we can actually get past that circlip and lock the CV shaft to the transmission differential inside of there. So what you want to do is hold with one hand over here, make sure it's nice and level going right into there so we're not riding on the seal or anything like that. So we're going to hold it, and then we're going to take our other hand and we're going to use this as a plunger, okay? And it looks a little something like this. We're going to hold it up, we're going to support it, make sure it's going in there straight, and then we're going to plunge it. Just like that, and you'll feel it fall right past like that. Now once it falls past, we're going to grab this end of it and we're going to pull it out, and it should come out maybe an eighth or quarter, and then dead stop, okay? And you know it's locked in. So definitely locked in. We're good to go on this side. We can continue installing this side. Now before you go back in with the CV shaft into the knuckle and hub here, you want to clean off the splines and the mating surface here with some brake clean and a rag, and we'll just get it nice and clean on there. A little compressed air, and then what I like to do is just put a light layer of anti-seize on here, on these surfaces, on the splines on here. Really light coat. Nothing on the actual threads here. And then make sure the splines over here are clean on the hub itself. And we're going to take this and we're going to work it back in. Just kind of turn it, same way it came out. We can get the tip of it into here like this. Now at this point, have your bolts ready. Okay, remember the bolts go in just like this. And we're gonna pick this up, support it, get it basically splined, okay? And we're gonna finish splining it just like that. You can see it's going in and out. We're definitely splined, we're not gonna bind. Then we can concentrate on getting these bolts lined up here. So what we'll do is we'll just get it lined up enough so we can get the top one in. Okay. And then the same thing for this lower one. Now on this particular vehicle, these actually fit pretty darn close in here. So what you'll find is your marking on here will actually match up pretty darn well. There's not much movement there. Okay. Now on the other side, you're going to have your two nuts. And your nuts have a retaining nylon insert inside of them that is basically damaged at this point. So what you want to use is blue medium strength Loctite on there. So we'll make sure our threads are nice and clean, and then I'll put a nice dose of Loctite on the threads of the nut. And we'll just spin them on by hand. Okay. Get you tilt up just a bit here. There we go. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and hold our bolt head, okay? Right there. We're going to make sure we line up. Let's see, we should go in just a little bit. You'll be able to see it on yours. And while we're holding that, right about there, we can go ahead and tighten down the nut. Now, with the top one tightened on there, we can go ahead and check our markings, make sure they line up before going any further with the bottom one on here. Okay, so everything looks good on there. I'll go ahead and tighten the bottom one, same thing. Now, once these are tightened up, we're aligned with the marks on there, we're going to go ahead and torque it down to 185 foot-pounds. Now, in reality, we should not have to hold the bolt head. Recheck it. Okay. 183, not good enough. All right. All right. Both of those are torqued. Okay, now it's time to put that caliper back on the caliper and bracket together. And they go in these two bolt holes right here. The two bolts took out earlier. Okay, so we're going to pull it back down from the strut there. Make sure the pads are spread. We're going to get it around the rotor. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to make sure we have the blue Loctite coated on each one of these bolts. We'll get the top one in first. It's usually easier. You just kind of move it around until you find the threads. You can start threading it in. Get it in a couple threads on there. And the bottom one here, if it's pushed in all the way, okay, what you're simply going to find is you lift up just a little bit and it'll start threading in. Okay, so right now both these are threading by hand. We're safe to go ahead and impact them in. Now the torque spec on these two bolts is 112 foot-pounds. Now with everything else back together, secured, a Loctite, torqued down, the last thing we got to do before putting the wheel back on is we're going to put that axle nut back onto here. Now you want the threads on here to be nice and clean, okay, both on the nut itself and the threads right here. And then we're going to put a healthy dose of blue Loctite once again on this. And then we're going to torque it down to 258 foot-pounds. So what I'll do is I'll clean the nut and the threads, little brake clean, and then I'll get any kind of grease off of there. Little press there, and they'll be ready for install. Now, fresh out it looks like here. Okay, we got plenty of Loctite on there. Everything's clean. It should spin right on just like that. We'll go ahead and impact it on, get it set, and then we'll go ahead and torque it down. And I'll show you a little trick, a little way to hold this all together so it doesn't spin on you whenever you're torquing it down, in case you don't have a helper to press on the brake pedal. Okay, so let's go ahead and tighten it down. Okay, so we got it set at this point, and then you're going to want to use something like this, a thick flat blade screwdriver, and we're going to stick it into the fins on the rotor, okay? You see it holds like that, like right there? And then we're going to turn the rotor until it wedges against the caliper bracket right here, and that'll hold it in place while we're doing the final torquing on here. Now again, it's 258 foot-pounds. All right, here we go. See how nice it holds it on there? Let's see. Close. All right. So at this point, this nut is also set. Torque down, back together. Make sure you pull your flat blade screwdriver out. Okay, so once you think you're done with the whole job here, you want to go over everything you may have touched to make sure it's all back into place and torque down like this axle nut right here. Go over it, make sure it's all good to go. All your bolts are tightened down for your brakes. Axle's fully pushed in. Hose is not twisted. That screwdriver is out of the rotor. Okay, it's very important. And then stuff like this, simple stuff like this, the ABS wiring. Make sure it's back into place before you put the wheel back on. Okay, so going back on with the wheel, we're going to go ahead, get it onto here once again. Get it lined up, and then we'll throw a couple nuts on the bottom side here, hold it in place for us so it doesn't kick out. You want to make sure you thread these by hand for sure, so we don't cross thread any wheel studs. Okay, good to go. So we'll just tighten them down in a star pattern on here with the impact, and then we'll torque them down afterwards once the wheel's on the ground. Same thing, star pattern. All right, let's go ahead and lower her back down. Now once the vehicle is back on the ground, we can go ahead and torque them down in a star pattern to 100 foot-pounds. Now what I do is I go over them once again to make sure everything is still at the torque spec, and then after I go for the test drive for the transmission concern, after we check the fluid level and stuff like that, I'll recheck these once again after it's been on the road for some time. Of course, in the end, make sure you check your fluid level in your transmission. There's a dipstick down in there. Just kind of pull it out. Put it through the gears, put it back into park, and then you can check the level on there. Make sure that it's fully inserted into the top of the cover there. The arrow should point like this, and you'll feel it drop in. That's how you want to take your reading. Okay, you pull it back out then after that. So just keep that in mind, this arrow right here will be facing that way. And it'll drop in there, you'll feel it. And you can check the fluid level then and adjust from there with a long funnel like this.